Hello there, Bravehearts, Urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I keep getting nudged, keep getting asked to talk about my thoughts for me to weigh in on the conversation. So I am, and I'm going to do it exactly the way I naturally feel to do it. And so, because of that, we have the astrological wheel and we have the good old dictionary. Because sometimes we get lost in translation, and sometimes we weigh in, like what I'm doing right now, way from the outer fringes of the circumstances. And so those two combinations makes for messy contemplations. And I usually don't like to clutter my mind any more than it already is. And so at the forefront, this is what I'm going to say. It's coming from Capricorn Sun, Virgo Moon, Virgo Ascending. Okay? That's my divine trifecta by which I will speak on this. In order for us to bring in proper context, I'm getting to the point in my more maturing ages from 45 to 55. I'm within that bracket. And as I travel this 10-year span, and I'm about, yeah, I'm walking up on the midway point between this 10-year spectrum. I'm finding more and more value in the power of my words as well as utilizing them wisely. And I am also finding the value in context. And what's making it very interesting is how the comprehensive natures of context runs way back to the ancient days. Like even the ancients were very specific about context. They wouldn't even enter into a conversation without the supporting evidence to be able to weigh in properly. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of backdrop for the reason why I ultimately decided to get up here and record the address to the situations and circumstances surrounding the latest trend into entanglement. And I believe if this wouldn't have happened, I probably would have said no to addressing this. Um, but it feels like sacred synchronicity is at play. Before I had even heard anything about what was going on with Will and Jada, let me back up just a tick. I usually don't even talk about things that happen in Tinseltown. I don't do celebrityism. I do spotlights on artists. I dabble into their stories. I go into their situations and circumstances looking for lessons and looking for identifiers of maturity. That's what I'll tap in to those realms for. But most often, Tinseltown is a bit too messy for me, mainly because the continuation of the lopsided effects around mental manipulation. Uh, the average folk, the common folk, the hobbits of this reality are not well read in the powers of words and language and sigils and signs and synchronicities. So a lot goes over their heads where one of the um, one of the sayings where it's sit inside of the um, the magics of tragic comedy is that it's only funny if you know the original story. Being a storyteller, being an advocate of authentic stories, being a coach of the powers of one telling its own story. I've become very keen on the word wizards, the author's originations, and what it's all about. We have been, for generations, fantastically, habitually eager to toggle inside of trend as if it is something of priority. We sit in conversations and we speak passionately about folk that we've never met ever a day in life. Why? Because we live inside of a social quilting, if you will, that focuses on celebrityism as if it was a component. Well, actually, it is a component of economic value. And America is known for its Hollywood. I want to say it's been about 7 years since I began digging deeper into this thing called Hollywoodism. And I have a couple of shout outs that I am going to make my way into. Um, and I'll start with all of the Bravehearts, Urbanites, and Coach Mad Hatters who have found themselves inside of the intellectual travels to decipher the powers of Hollywood. Now, because I am who I am, that is what I am, I like to usually bring in um, intellectual value that balances the balances my comprehension. It has a lot to do with my black moon being in Lilith, as well as, hold on, I got to pull out the coordinates of the birth chart. But it has a lot to do with my fundamental characteristics, my archetypal makeup, my astrological influences. And so in Libra, my Uranus is in Libra, which means all of my evolutionary power, that which jolts me or provokes me, has to be balanced. So in my mind, I reconcile immediately. It's a natural instance, as well as my Pluto being in Libra, which means all of the hard transformations, that tough stuff. I balance it out automatically. It's just something that my mind and heart willingly goes into. Yeah, it's a bit weighty, it's dark. I say all the time, I am the whisperer of the shadows. I dwell in the valleys. Some people are situated up in the clouds. I am not. I honestly dwell inside of what many would call the dragon's lair. I often joke with many of my friends, as well as my children and my nieces and nephews, those within my inner court. I often joke about when they come to visit me, you're literally coming into the dragon's den. I don't do small talk. there's always something permeating within my mind that tells me that I must serve as the one that can advise upon the riddles of this world, which may be why folks wanted me to chime in on this because they knew that I was going to bring in tow the shadowy, more weighty side of this view. So, um, I think that is all of my Libra bound, my weighing the scales influences, which is my Uranus Libra 18 degrees, my Pluto Libra 2 degrees, and my Black Moon Lilith Libra 24 degrees. So if you know anything about the characteristics about Pluto, if you know that Pluto stands for major transformation, as a matter of fact, just show you real quick. This is my card. I'm kind of well when it's all laid out. I'm using it as a night vision board to sharpen my my sight and senses around that which is traditionally called darkness. They often say about those that can see in the dark, those that can see below the SEE level. And so I took from which I promise I'm going to keep my promise. Just there are other readings that are back there. I'm a little backlogged. I'm a little backlogged with my recordings associated with my readings. So just be patient. But the numinous, if you look up the word numinous, there's an astro deck by Ruby Warrington and Bess Matassa. They have come up with this amazing concept around the elements of the numinous, which is all of the planets, the houses, the signs, the birth chart, and the transits, the aspects. So, um, yeah. So it gives a wonderful foundation into the language of astro arts and sciences. They also allow you to take a look at a birth chart. And of course, I am who I am. I have to label some of my things so because I am inside of a major learning curve. And even though I don't do labels inside of existential situations, I most often do labels inside of my academic situations because I must give my brain something to identify, which it then latches on to my it almost serves as a pulse or a beacon of energy that pulses out inside of my numinous connectivities to say, I'm learning this, I'm seeking this, I need you to come and latch on so that I may further investigate or discover or whatever have you. So those languages allow me to send out my inquiries into the numinous, into the dark spaces, into the non physical unknown, into the wild unknown of the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung fondly investigated as. And so, along those lines, along the lines of our astrological makeup, all the parts of us that are non physical, that is only seen when we close these two physical eyes. I'm going to launch from that space. I usually do, but I need to make that clear right now because the physical ramifications of Will and Jada unless you are able to go into their home, sit on their sofa, kick off your shoes, and go in the refrigerator. You don't know nothing about that life. You don't know nothing about that life. And I often find myself having to referee to say, stay out of married folk business. I swear, pillow talk or the lack thereof is something that you do good not to interfere with. So let me get back to my story. I'm sitting on the front porch. I'm at dad's house. Everybody know when we be at the house, we commune on the front porch. It's a large enough porch where several folk can sit down and get comfy and have themselves a grand conversation. So several of the family is out because it's a beautiful evening. The wind is blowing, and it was around. Okay, so let me just real quick. I'm all over the place. Hang with me. It's gonna all come together and make sense in a moment. Um, So y'all, you all, if you've been hanging with me long enough, know how I do. I am a journalist, but I'm an urban journalist. I journal for the sake of self-reflection and for all things of therapeutic value. So I journal a lot. Yeah, Virgo moon, Virgo ascending. I am a conduit of Mercury. So I'm a word wizard at best. On July 8th, for some reason, I get up and the word entanglement is in my head. Mind you, I don't follow the celebrityism. Hmm. And I can't like overstate that. Only those who know me honestly know what I mean when I say, like, I only tap in to, I only cross the threshold into the virtual spaces, into the world wide web when I have to, or I've already designated in my mind, I'm going to fuck it off. Yeah, I'm just going to veg out and I'm going to do whatever. Other than that, I am honestly one of those that shut down everything at the end of the day. When I say everything, I'm talking about I log out of Google, I log out whatever virtual door I had to log into. When I'm shutting it down for the night, I literally hard to come out of all of that. I hard shut down my laptop. The only thing I don't shut down at the end of the day is my phone, but it still is in a situated place somewhere. My daughter makes quite a bit of jokes about how I am never close to my phone. I'm wherever I'm at. So we're sitting on the porch, and and it was directly within 3 days of it popping into my mind, this word, entanglement. Now, it meant everything to me from an astrological standpoint because those are the paths that I'm traveling. Those are the vortex that I hang in. So the word comes up, and I have to say, the majority of those that were sitting on the porch inside of this conversation were young folk. So we're talking early to mid 20s. And the word comes up. Me and my astro genius space. I was like, oh my gosh, I just looked up that word. And so I'm about to go into the spiel of all my astrological hoopla of how and why this word is meaning so much to me. But the passion of the young folk with regards to Will and Jada, it took over. And my baby sister is 26. She was like, sis, you don't know what's going on? I was like, no, I don't know what's going on. So for 45 minutes. Like everybody had to chime in to bring me up to speed. Now this happens often, okay? This isn't this isn't new. Like I honestly tap into those around me to figure out what's going on. I don't watch the news. I get all of my stats from the grapevine. Always have, probably will, always will. And I weigh in on the different perspectives of how they are perceiving certain things. Because if you really think about it, if you're watching the news, you get it from their perspective. So one thing that I have been graciously granted are folks that critically analyze. They tap into a myriad of sources and then they process it. And so I have found my lane in that. And so whether it's my best friend, I'll tap into him, or my barbers, because remember, I did 20 years in the beauty industry. So I'll tap into my stylists and my barbers, see what they talking about, see what's being permeated in the salons and the shops, and I also, inside of that 20-year span inside of the beauty industry, was a for a brief time, but I speak of it. It was an endearing phase in my life where I was a beauty instructor. So I did not have as many students as I would have liked because, like I said, it ended rather abruptly. But being in the space to hear from the young folk, I always seem to find myself in those spaces. So I'm getting the rundown, right? And in the back of my mind, I am connecting astrological dots. So I'm like, let me let me see. Let me do some astro stats on Will and Jada. For one thing, they've been married since 1997. I got my cosmetology license through the state of Maryland in 1997. I have been through a multi-tiered life and transformed into a new life since then, meaning I am not the same Thea that I was in 1997. And since me and Jada are what I like to call homies from the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, within that trifecta, there is a certain type of mindset around how you kick it with folks, how you romp around with folks, how you hang sweet with folks, as well as the fact that with her being a Sun Virgo, the word entanglement coming from a conduit of Mercury is a fundamental usage of language. Now, what I did not know was that Will is a Sun Libra. Had no idea. So, also, him being able to weigh in on what he is now being faced with and the way he is publicly reacting to such shenanigans, I get it. So, I thought I was going to read to you what I wrote. Um, okay, maybe I will. Okay. So, July 8th, 2020, without ever knowing it, I was linked to tap into the defining powers of the word entanglement. And of course, since I don't frequently follow celebrity news or pop culture principles, I had not a clue involving this word being associated with one of my due diligent power couples. Jada Mosley, she's a DMV empress and goddess warrior of gentilly enchanted gardens, Team Mercury. When she's reflecting upon her individuation process, I identify wholeheartedly. Since my complete and utter safe space when understanding her aim to define that moment in time as an entanglement, I honestly felt her as if we were sitting in conversation and she said, "You know what, coach? You feel me?" And I have to affirm that I honestly do. I astrologically do. And not because I've been a host of such shenanigans, but because being in being the intuitive coach of Coach Mad Hattery, I feel slash I know entanglements like the back of my hat, such an occupational hazard. Entanglement means a complicated or compromising relationship with extensive situations. The next word entering into the conversation should have been etymology. So, with that being said, oh, and I'm going to get to this real quick. You know what? Because with my, I just want to, I just want to pull out the Pluto card real quick so that we can get an understanding of from where I launch. So, Pluto, transformation, renewal, inner resources, basic instinct, innovation, personal power, evolution, composting, cycles of death, rebirth, subversion, suspicion, obsession, intensity, reckoning, taboos, clearings, and extremes. So, if anyone is familiar with the transits that are currently permeating this dimension, we will know that Pluto, Jupiter, and Capricorn are in full effect. They are majorly hitters in this thing called the astro life. Pluto comes to transform. What better way to transform than when you are either abiding by, tuning in, or being schooled on the rules of engagement, aka entanglements? All types of engagements are going to at some point have its utilizations in entanglement. Now, because and I swear, that child name, I can't. I don't know. I don't mean to call him a child, because one thing I know is me and Jada, we older than him. She was born in '71. I was born in '72. So, and I understand the shenanigan. Like, let's not get that fucked up. I have no judgment in that area. I honestly don't, because I understand human entanglement. And I understand that it can get quite messy, just like it can be quite marvelous and magically delicious. It can be all those and not those, all at the same fucking time. That's how intricate, into intricate, yeah, the intricacies of this thing called the human experience. We never think about the non physical beings that are attached to our physical being that have enlisted as our multiplicity, our multiple personalities and emotionalities that come through us to play. You have no idea what attracted them two together. You have no idea what the ebb and flows that's going on with Will and Jada. We don't know none of those intricate details. We don't know none of them details. And yet, we want to talk about what we think so and so should have done in that situation. Let me tell you something. When you find yourself being schooled by a classic entanglement, baby, the only thing that you really need to do is pull out your fucking journal. That's what you need to do. Class is now remotely in session. And we like to weigh in on folks' public reaction to shit. Nobody talks about the backdrop, so it's behind the scenes. And we know they go on. So I'm not going to rant too long on here because, like I said, I have other things that are in backlog that is waiting for my attention. So, just for the sake of um, respect to Mercury, the the celestial communicator. So, we tapped into what entanglement is. So, I'm going to give you some other ones. So, in soul, to endow with a soul, to unite with a soul. Ensue, to follow as a consequence or a result. Enterprise, an undertaking, especially one of some scope, compilation, and risk. A business organization, industrious with semantic activity. Will and Jada is a brand, but Will and Jada tip out in and around however their human soul guides them to do. Enthusiasm, a great or intense feeling for a subject or cause. Baby boy had a cause, and his cause was to be entangled with Jada's soul. Sometimes you just need some loving. Sometimes you just need some sexual healing. It has nothing to do with anything else than two souls meeting. Yes, it got complicated. Because sometimes the nectar is what it, it's what it is. And twist, to twist together, to entwine. Entrance, the act or an instance of entering, a means or opening that affords entry, permission or power to enter. Admission, the point in which a musical score at which a performer is to begin. Folks don't even really understand what sensual encounter honestly is, what intimate engagement honestly is. And they hardly ever seek it from the soul's perspective. We have no idea if it was already destined for them to entangle, to entwist. We don't know. We don't know. That's why I don't like celebrity pop culture news shit because it takes all of the sacred significance out of this human experience. And I'm gonna leave you with a few more. Engagement, an act of engaging or the state of being engaged. And I'm talking about engage as in interaction, not the not the prequel to matrimony. Enkindle, to set a fire, to light. Like Brother Bobby Hemmings say, we are the original Kundalini people. Okay? There are some non physical beings that honestly show up for us to have the Kundalini entangled experience and then they peace out. Now, granted, because this society is set up the way that it's set up, then we most often have to be toggling back and forth the fuckery of mainstream. But those who are anchored, that are centered in their love language and have adopted it and embraced it, you're not swayed by this crockery. Ennoble, to make noble, to raise in rank, and to be of nobility. Sometimes there is a sacred central ritual that only one or two particular other beings can render you the rites of passage into a a sanction of consciousness, because only one or two have the combination that fits your combination, that invisibly unlocks doorways and portals into new experiences, that blossoms this newness, and then it becomes like soul scholarship. Then it becomes something that you can't be taught. You can only experience to get the lesson. And if y'all don't think Miss Jada is a goddess, and I'm not saying that folks about that men about to be lined up around the door to get some of the nectar, but what I am saying is that those that fate brings together enjoy to receive pleasure from, relish to have the use or benefit of. And I think I'm going to end it there. Enrich, to make rich, to make richer, to make fuller, more meaningful, more rewarding. Yeah, um, I'm good. Ha, enigma, an obscure speech or writing, one that is puzzling, ambiguous, inexplicable. Enigmatic, enigmatic, of or resembling an enigma, puzzling. And if you all think that Miss Jada of Divine Goddess Feminine is not an enigma to some masculines that's permeating this realm, silly rabbit, you have some soul maturing to do. You have some intellectual and some intuitive maturing to do. And I'm not throwing shade, like for real, I'm not. But sometimes it is required that we elevate our human awareness into the outer spaces of the non physical and realize that there is so much life that is going on inside of the non physical spaces that connect and manifest into the physical spaces that we are just not doing our due diligence to become aware of. And I know we love to do the human sanctions of legal marriage and matrimony and all of those things. But when I say that there is a bigger game at play, those that have eyes to see, I'm hoping that they begin seeing, as well as those that have ears to hear. I'm hoping that somewhere, somehow, the evolutionary harmony of uncommon sense begins to latch on to your curiosities, and you find yourself in spaces and places that are only situated for you. That's what the numinous is all about. That's what diving into or striding into the wild unknown, into the darkness, into the dark arts. And I ain't talking about that spooky so called evil fuckery that Hollywood has conditioned us to believe in. No, I'm talking about that sacred chaos, that divine primal force by which all is born, the sacred womb. Inside there, baby, all you have is your senses, your uncommon senses. And so I say, suspend your judgment. Like I said in the beginning, if you are not one of those that can go sit, come through the front door, unrequited, come through the front door, sit on the sofa, kick your shoes off, and go through the fridge, we really need not be weighing in on these married folk business. Because come on, it's so much ebbing and flowing, seasons and cycles inside of that matrimony there. So many things have changed and evolutionized and matured. And so, yeah, I mean, he really got ripe nectar. Baby boy, stop whining. He can't have no more nectar. And I mean, I'm going to say this because I know, and it's a little shady, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I love Will. I am a Will fan, but I'm more of a Jada fan. And it's like, okay, so whatever the decisions was, when you decided that, or she decided, or you both decided that you all were going to have some distance to the point where baby boy could get up in there in the first place. Yeah, that's some of the consequences and some of the occupational habits that come with that set. And sometimes I be wondering if if Jada like, the fuck is going on right now? Out of all the things, out of all the evolutionary strides I have made, I have beefed up my vocabulary. I have raised my children. I have built my brand, not the one that I co-joined with Will, mine, my sacred goddess eminence. I have stepped into Empress mode gracefully. I've gave y'all bitches all kinds of entertainment. I've done my work. I've paid my dues. And you really mean to tell me that whatever goes on in my sacred individuation process, y'all motherfuckers gonna weigh in? You gonna weigh in? You ain't had not one conversation with me and you gonna weigh in? The fuck? The Grapevine presents. So y'all have a good one. Thanks for joining me, and I wish you well.